great way for a delighted John Cleland to start the new season. Second on the grid, first in the race. That'll do nicely. Another 18 left, and will Rydell bog down in the Volvo again? We'll soon know. And the answer is no.
We need to work harder. It's not good enough. 2 engines and 2 races. Not acceptable. The team must push harder. Today, my radar engines must stop blowing up. I'm trying to build a championship.
John Cleland is sandwiched between the 2 BMWs and going for first, says John Cleland. Oh, Matt Neal sideways, championship leader, entering trouble sideways, he gets it back again. It's Plato and Matt Neal, side by side.
I'm going to rip your face off. You know what that? I'm going to rip your Hey! What are we doing here? Is this stock car racing or is this motorsport? The man's an animal.
And Colin Turkington is going to become the champion for the 3rd time in his career with 1 race to stand.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special episode of Reverse Grid, the unofficial BTCC podcast. As ever, Chris Tetroplay here with the man, the myth, the legend that is Lee Tilston. How are you, mate?
What a build-up. I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, not good, not bad. Thank you, mate. Not bad. Not bad. This is, when I've done podcasts before and I've chosen a point of which is always this time of year where I kind of think, okay, I've got to take a little bit of a break, and that it was felt a little bit sad in one way, and I do feel like that this will be the last one for 2023. We are planning to drop another bonus one before we kind of relaunch again next year. But I almost don't feel sad about this one because I know it's a great way to kind of finish it off. We got a really fun episode. So what are we talking about? I'll let you introduce it.
Today we're going to take a bit of a dive. Bit of a trip down memory lane to a better time, the mid-90s, where this specific season, I was 14, don't know how old you were in 1995, but it was certainly a simpler time. It was a fantastic season.
Mm-hmm. I was 11, by the way. Yeah.
A bit younger than me then. And then we are going to fast forward 20 years to 2015 and discuss that particular season as well. And irony, 2 ironies. Do you want me to give you the 2 ironies to kick us off?
Go on, let's do it.
And these didn't come into play. We picked these years out sort of randomly, really. Didn't we? We wanted to do a super touring one and one sort of fairly recent. Obviously, both won by Scottish drivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And both seasons, the champion drivers, John Cleland, Gordon Shedden, both scored 348 points. Both scored an identical.
Wow.
Scored, which I don't know how often that's happened in the championship's history, but I wouldn't imagine it's happened often. But we just happened to choose those 2 seasons.
Yeah, 20 years apart, so it's fairly kind of pivotal in a way. I mean, it's two different eras, isn't it? So that's a cool fact. I like it.
When you think as well, there was 5 extra races, obviously in 2015 than there was in 95. The points score system had been radically changed as well.
Mm.
So yes, for the 2 champion drivers to end up on identical points, both Scottish drivers, both 20 years apart, I think it's quite a spooky coincidence.
That's very cool. I like that. Yeah. Well done, mate. Ideal.
Yeah.
That's why I like having you and the things you
see. That's what happens when you do a little bit of research. I go rare, and I come up with these gems.
That's great. So 1995 and 2015. The coincidence, I suppose, personally, I didn't see either of these seasons live, as it were. I didn't experience them that I remember. I mean, 1995, I wasn't watching it. I think the main car that I know I'm probably going to bang on about when we discuss that one, I was familiar with at that time. But 2015, I've gone back this week to go back over it. I swore blind I didn't know it because I started in 2012, saw 2013, 2014. My kids came along in 2014, and then just kind of for a few years, I just didn't have the time to keep up with it.
That does tend to happen. That happened to me for a couple of years. 2017, 18, 19 are all a bit of a blurb, and then
But there were bits when we get to talk about that. There were bits that I did remember, so I think I must have started watching it and then I must have lost it sort of partway through. So it's great to delve back in. But I mean, let's go chronologically then. Let's kick off and sort of look into the 1995 season. So you've already mentioned, John Cleland. It was his title-winning year, his second championship. What I quite like about that one, I'll sort of kick off. We're just going to freestyle a lot of this, I think, to be fair. What I quite like when I look back on that one, firstly, I love John Cleland. I thought he was well overdue for another title. But as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, he was the first driver at that point to win the championship in both the class era, when he won the Class D Astra, and then obviously outright in sort of the new setup by the time we get to the mid-90s, which is I think makes him quite remarkable in that sense.
Yeah, I think he certainly holds this. I think this 1995 title was very special to him. Not that the 1989 one wasn't, but I think he says himself that he won the 1989 title and his best result was something like 10th or something, which seems a bit odd. But
I've always felt
system, wasn't it?
Yeah, but when you saw like the Class C, Class D cars that won it over people like Andy Rouse and Steve Soper and that, it didn't sit right with me. Again, I loved the fact that an Astra won it, but I think the way it never felt like it was an outright win.
No.
For that,
it messes up the kind of like the when people look back at the stats, whether it's race wins or when you talk, for example, when you're talking about who's the greatest touring car driver ever, people will say, "Oh, you got to go back to the 60s or 70s. What about those guys?" And they were great drivers, but unfortunately, the system, the way it was so confusing that drivers that were winning titles were not winning races, and that's why they're way down the order now. When we look at the sort of the roll of honour, in terms of race wins and stuff. And I think it wasn't really, was it, till sort of 91 when things became a bit more straightforward and a bit easier to work out things. So
that's it. Because because was it Rob Gravitt won the 1991, and then they then did away with was it that year?
I think Will Hoy was the first year. Yeah, it was of the straightforward sort of.
It really started to
class,
change. But obviously, I'm a massive Vauxhall fan. I'm not going to hide that. The Cavalier was the car that I grew up with. I spent most of my childhood in one because as I probably mentioned, my dad, my uncle, my granddad, they all had Cavaliers. So the old, I think they were Mark IIs. They started off with then the Mark IIIs, like the kind that Cleland was racing. So seeing one of them on a racetrack was quite special. I must have caught it some point on the TV because I knew there was a Cavalier out there that was a racing car. So I look back on this season quite fondly for that. It was the Cavalier's last season as well. What a swan song.
It was.
So what key moments can you pick out then?
Well, that was the first year that we ever went to watch touring cars.
Okay.
So my dad took us to the May bank holiday meeting at Alton Park, and that was our introduction to touring cars. And we had a Volvo at the time, and Rickard Rydell won the first race in a Volvo, and so he became my hero from that moment on, really, for the rest of his time in it. So 95 is a special year there for me personally, but also on top of that, it was just a great season, wasn't it? It was so competitive, and at various stages of the season, when it looked like Volvo was the car to beat for the first few meetings. Rydell and Tim Harvey both won a lot of races. Then the Vauxhall looked the car to beat, and James Thompson was a good teammate for John Cleland. And at the end of the season, Renault were absolutely rampant. So it was, and you had other cars in the mix, like Paul Radicic in the Ford Mondeo, and Kelvin Burt won a race, and it was just a really competitive season. I think it was an absolute classic.
One thing that I forget, I think, from here, Matt Neal, he won the Independence that year. Did he have a Mondeo? He won it in a Mondeo.
He did, yeah. It was the second time he'd won it. He won it in 93 first.
Yeah, I completely forgot when I look back on Matt Neal, it's always either he's a Honda or his Primera. I keep forgetting that he raced a Mondeo at some point.
Yeah, he had the Mondeo. He had the BMW for a couple of years when he first came in. Then he was Mondeo for a few years, Nissan for a few years, and then mainly Honda, obviously, apart from his little spells at Vauxhall.
Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting about
He had 3 seasons at Vauxhall in the midst of all years racing Hondas. And, of course, one meeting in a Peugeot 406, which often gets forgotten.
Yeah, I think the 406.
The lime green one, yeah.
I love the 406.
Yeah.
You know, it went, they're one sort of to look at. That's one of my favourite cars. Was it like the green and the gold ones, or was it just?
No, it was 2001. Remember it, Steve Soper and Dan Eves.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And he did, and it was supposed to be the 3 of them, and then something happened after the first meeting, and Matt Neal didn't do the rest of the season. So, but yeah, he did just do that one meeting.
But you're right.
But no, I mean, it certainly was a great season. And
was that the first year that Volvo they changed from the estate to the saloon?
Yeah.
So that I think when I look back at that season, and it follows '94, where Alfa Romeo just basically trounced everyone. And when I look back on it, I think the one thing that I personally found quite amusing is they came completely unstuck in '95.
With ProDrive as well, you think what they did with the Ford Mondeos at the end of the Super Touring era, and what a crack team they were, and I mean, they just couldn't get to grips with it.
Tarquini wasn't there, was he? I think he came in.
He came in midway through. In fact, he came in at Alton Park, the meeting that we were at.
Oh, okay.
And I always remember my dad talking about that, saying, "Oh, the champion's back, the champion, Cavalier Tarquini's back." But obviously, we weren't over our heads by then, so But yeah, it was quite a moment really with Tarquini being back, and Derek Warwick was his teammate, which was his first step into touring cars, and Giampiero Simoni was still around. But I mean, it was a great season. I mean, just looking, you look down at the names. I mean, Tarquini, Menu, Radicic, Cleland, Watts, Harvey, Julian Bailey, Thompson, Rydell, Johnny Chicotto, David Brabham, David Leslie, Will Hoy. It was just fantastic.
You would pay good money these days to watch a meeting.
Oh yeah,
with even just some of them on the bill, wouldn't you? Really?
Yeah.
But, one thing jumped out at me actually is John Cleland went on a little bit of a winning streak halfway through.
He did midway through. I think he won 4 on the bounce.
4 on the bounce at 3 different circuits, wasn't he? I think it was the last race at race at Brands, both at Donington, the first one at Silverstone.
Yes, Silverstone Grand Prix. Yeah.
So that's quite, to me, it's great when you see that. I love to see if someone's going to win the championship. I'm one of those who love to see them, take most of the races rather than sort of, play the odds and, stay far enough back that they're getting the points. Yeah,
no, you're right. Yeah. And although I think Alain Menu might have won more races that season. Just about, but only by 1, I think. And let me just 1.
Menu had 7. So you're right. He did win more. Yeah. Cleland had 6. So yeah.
But and then I think Rydell won 4 as well. I think so. That's what I mean. It was a really competitive.
Yeah, it was good to see so
Will Hoy won a couple. Tim Harvey won a couple. James Thompson won one. So those 3 cars, between the 2 teammates, they each won a really good number. It was Honda's first season in touring cars as well. And, they ended up becoming a real stalwart of the championship, didn't they, over the next 25 years. And a season as well noticeable for 2 gigantic crashes.
One of them being James Thompson. It's one I remember. That put him
Knock
out
Hill,
for the rest of the season, didn't it? Yeah.
It did, yeah. And the other one being probably arguably the most famous touring car crash, is it? Charlie Cox's barrel roll at Thruxton.
Oh, yes.
Certainly one of the most spectacular, and again, it put him out for half a season.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, something James Thompson one always jumps out at me, but I'm forgetting that one took place in the same. Yeah, because when I've been to Thruxton, obviously last couple of seasons, preceding that, the kind of reputation for it being the fastest circuit and everything, and they've got a history of some quite spectacular
Yeah.
shunts.
When you get it wrong, there's
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen so much now. I mean, not in the touring cars anyway. We saw a bad one in the Ginettas last year. Really bad one on the Sunday. But you don't see a lot of it happening in the main sort of competitions. So it just maybe an indication of how things have changed since then in terms of the on-track competitiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will, or safety of the cars. Don't know. I wouldn't say that, but yeah, 95, good year. It
was a really good year.
There was a song in there. I'm not going to sing.
It was a very good year.
You're all right. Yeah.
And also, it was another quite a pivotal year. It was the first year that the touring car started running with the front splitters, wasn't it, and the rear wings.
That's right. Yeah. Was that
the controversy the season before
I was
with
going to
Alfa
say a
Romeo?
result of, yes. Yeah. So is that the reason why Alfa didn't do anywhere near as well? Because everyone else
Possibly, yeah. Although having listened to an interview with Gabriele Tarquin recently, he's always claimed that it wasn't the splitters and the rear wing that was the difference. It was the differential was a real advantage. I mean, like I say, I'm not most mechanically invested, but I know that's something that he's really preached about in a couple of interviews. That apparently was the diff was the diff, the big difference, and apparently that was So, but no, it was fantastic year and good memories, and I mean that's a season review that I think we must have worn the video tape down and the DVD since, as I'd certainly had plenty of views. I would certainly put it in the top 3 BTCC seasons certainly of the years that I've been watching it.
Good shout. I think when you see Menu as well, the real challenge he put on the championship that year, it's unsurprising to see what he did 2 years later.
Yeah.
Was 2 years, wasn't it? 97.
Well, it was well, the way that they finished 95, you would have thought, and I suppose it's with a little bit kind of just bringing us to the present a bit, but they were so dominant, the Renaults. I mean, it wasn't just Menu, was it? But Menu and Hoy, they won the last 5 races.
That's right.
At Renault Laguna, and Williams was the first year Williams was running them.
Yes.
So you would have thought going into 96, I bet over the winter of 95, people was thinking there's no, you can't look beyond Renault. Kind of like what we're all thinking now about Napa after such a dominant season. You can't see beyond them. But it just didn't happen in 96 for Renault for whatever reason. I mean, Audi had a pretty
I was going to say Frank Wheeler came along and
with 4-wheel drive, but even despite that, they weren't that competitive until quite late into the season, really, and they were never as good as what they were in the second half of 95.
No.
No.
Then we know who came along in 97 and made it all stepped up the competition a little bit. But there we go. No, that's a good one to go back to. The seasons either side of that, I think we could easily take any of these seasons from the 90s and do a whole episode on them. But I think 94...
Well, I think we will be, won't we? Over the course of the next years, months, and whatnot, we will be doing this quite regularly. I think dipping into classic seasons.
The 2 seasons that the bookends 95 are quite interesting. With 94, obviously, like we said, Alfa Romeo were kind of untouchable, and then I felt the same about the Audi the following year. There was just something about it.
Renault 97, and then Nissan 99.
Yeah,
and I kind of look at 95, 98, and just about maybe 2000 of being 3 seasons where it was pretty competitive, really, between the whole field. And I think that's why all 3 of those really stand out. And I think that's what fans like to see. I mean, I know Napa have got their supporters, but I think most people, nobody really wants to see one car, one driver dominate, do they? I think if you can spread the wins around, it always makes for a far more memorable season.
Exactly. So, would you like to, go back to the future then for 20 years and what was happening then, 2 decades later?
Okay. Well, do you want was there any drivers still around you would like to take a punt on? Do you think from 95 to
Oh,
2015?
hang on, bear with. I've got my list in front of me. No
There's
one's.
one I think that's pretty obvious, but
Well, Matt Neal, obviously.
yeah. And
Yeah.
he was the only survivor.
He was with the only. Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
A bigger curveball there coming my way. Yeah, and I think the one thing. So when I went back and kind of refreshed filled in the blanks, as it were, in the end for 2015, the one thing I do remember from then when I was watching it is it's almost like watching pre-season and football season when you got the transfer window doing silly things. There seemed to be like semi-drivers that were moving. I think the really surprising thing with me was Colin Turkington off the back of his title win in 2014.
Yeah.
He moved. Plato moved. Obviously, BMR came out, all guns blazing with the Passat, another car I absolutely love because I love the road version, so I was a great fan of that car. But yeah, Turkington and Plato on the same team. You put Aaron Smith in there as he was as well, and then Andrew Jordan making still doesn't look right him having Pertec MG, but there was a lot of movement. And
it was.
It really sort of, I think it gave a certain flavour to the beginning of that season because you really didn't know what to expect, and I think how it ended up, maybe, I mean, there might not be too much in the way it ended up with the solidarity that Team Dynamics had that they were running with still, with Neal and Shedden seemed to win out in the end, than these other guys who were trying these cars for the first time.
Yep.
It was
I watched this review this week, obviously in preparation for this, and I've got to be honest, there was nothing that I remembered from it. Nothing, and it was brilliant. I enjoyed watching it. It was a really good. In fact, what we were just saying before about the competitive nature, I would put this season as was one of the most competitive seasons of recent years. I mean, and just a quick scroll down at the winners chart tells there was so many different winners. I mean, Shedden was the champion, only won four races. Jason Plato won 6. Matt Jackson won 4, and he only did half a season.
We'll come to that because I completely forgot about motivation.
There was so many race winners. I mean, Andrew Jordan didn't even win a race that season.
No, he didn't. And I made a note here that when we got to Snetterton and Jack Goff won race 3, at that point, bearing in mind we still got a few meetings left after that, he was the 9th different winner already by that point. It's like you're saying. So then Jackson started winning. So there would have been 10 different race winners that season. And it was a really close battle, wasn't it? I mean, Shedden didn't run away with it at any stage, and I think he even said himself, I think in his interview, that it'd been a really messy season. Yeah, because it was him. And I mean, I think going into the last meeting, mathematically there were 5 drivers, but it was really down to Shedden and Plato. And I think Shedden went in to Brands Hatch 23 points ahead, and he ended up winning it by 4 because of what Plato was able to do. I think Shedden had a rough couple of first races and that it just wasn't going his way, and that is the kind of finale we like. Where it's still.
Well, it was. I mean, but we say that. I said that 95 was the first season that I went to touring cars. Well, 2015 was the first year where I didn't go to a meeting. It was the first time I'd missed Dalton Park. I was on holiday, and I didn't get to any of the meetings. And I just can't. I was watching it and this review, and I just couldn't remember any of it. I couldn't remember some of the. It's almost like the whole season has just been blank. But I really enjoyed watching it back. And one of the things I'd forgotten, which it kind of alludes what we were talking about the other week, was they did qualifying in a way for the second race, didn't they? They didn't do the finishing order. It was fastest lap.
I like that. I completely forgot about that. Yeah,
I'd completely forgotten about it, but I wonder why they stopped it. I mean,
I don't know.
Was it? But what it could have been was, I noticed watching the review that a lot of drivers was sacrificing the first race.
Plato did it a lot.
Plato did it a lot, and again, I was watching it and I was scratching my head thinking, why is Plato doing this? Because in a way, he was giving up so many points from race 1 to gamble on a good position in race 2, and more often than not, it didn't work. And I thought he must have cost himself the championship there. It was a balmy tactic.
Some of them seem to be for a reason. I think he had issues where he had to pit there was either some damage or tyre issues, whatever. He pitted and then came back out, obviously towards the end of the pack, and there was one race where he probably could have, and the old Plato would have just pushed himself to get up as far as he could. But the commentators made the point of he was holding back to the back so that he could set a faster lap, from the back, so he can give himself the best chance in race 2. I mean, that is tactics and a half, if you ask me.
Yeah. I wonder if that in a way kind of ruins that.
Why?
Right. I mean, was it still in place for 2016?
I don't know. I'll have to go and have a look, because I couldn't even remember that was a ruling, which is about right, because this is about the time I lost a few years. I watched it regularly.
But no, it was good though, because and that's probably one of the reasons why there was so many different race winners, because obviously what we found a lot this season was the guy that won the first race, or the guys that finished in the top 5 were pretty much, unless they had a mechanical problem, they would finish in the same order in the next race.
Yeah.
And that's what led to a lot of the procession racing that we saw. Whereas I think that format there really did mix up all 3 races.
Yeah.
Definitely something they need to think about for next season.
That would be great. That's as soon as I realised that, and found that out about how they did the second one, immediately I thought that would be fantastic if they brought that back for next year.
Yeah. Even if they did something like, they took your second best qualifying lap from some qualifying would determine your race 2 or something like that. So it stops those kind of silly games going on, because that happened in 2004 as well, when they first brought in the reverse grid. If you remember back then, they didn't pull it. It was just literally the top 10 reversed. You were deliberately getting drivers who was 8th, for example, 7th or 8th, dropping back to finish 9th or 10th and getting a front row start. So and they were just literally, it was farcical at times, seeing like 4 cars all crawling over the line. So they had to do something there. So, but funny enough, Jason Plato was the instigator of that one as well, and it was when they started. Because but that would be race 2. So by finishing on, like, say for example, 9th in race 1, he would then win race 2 and then win race 3 as well, because he was starting from the front. So you got other cars doing that then, and so that's why they changed it. They switched it to race 3 and obviously did the random draw. So. But no, it was a good thing that.
Well, let's see. They're making some changes, obviously, ahead of for next season. I think we mentioned the last one, obviously, the way they're going to do the qualifying now. Once I can get my head around it, there might be something within that they could bring in, like you just mentioned about second fastest qualifying times. They're doing it in parts. There's possibly something they can pull out of that to then influence race 2, which would be quite good. We'll see. There's a couple of notes I made about 2015, which were quite funny, I thought, when you consider where we are now, because some of the names that are battling out at the top this season were sort of making headlines of one degree or another in 2015. I remembered, and it wasn't until I saw it that I remembered it was that season where Aron Smith had the save of the century at Donington Park, where he and Josh Cook, I think, coming out or approaching one of the bends. I can't remember exactly where it was, but they ended up off the grass. Josh Cook went one way, and Aron Smith ended up going completely over the other side across the track and missing everyone, and just rejoining. And I know he still talks about that today. Is one of those moments where I think we wouldn't have wanted to be doing his washing the next day. But in one of the last meetings as well, it could have well have been Brands. I can't remember. It's hidden there in my notes somewhere. There was a safety car deployed because Tom Ingram and Jake Hill got into a tussle.
Tom Ingram, at the start of the race, which, Ingram went off a Druids, was stuck in the gravel. And then Jake Hill got hit by somebody else and hit into him. So, but I mean, that was a crazy race watching that. Was that the race where literally the safety car came out 3 times, lap after lap.
Could be, yeah.
I mean, and I think 2 of the drivers, Stuart Lyons was one, and Dave
Yes.
Newton was another. I think they spun at just as the safety car went in. They must have spun on cold tyres, and they both
Right.
spun up in the same place.
Um,
And you can imagine Jason Plato at the time. Well, he might be laughing because he was leading the race and on course to win the championship at the time.
yeah.
But Gordon Shedden was back in 15th, needed to get up into the top 5, and
Yeah, that was it.
couldn't get any racing laps in really because the safety car kept coming out.
And that's it. And that's one thing I heard him say at the end there, because you saw him, and it's genuinely he didn't expect to win the title, I think. And he said that about the safety car. He was just well aware he was running out of time and running out of opportunities to race to be able to get it. And you know, that's one of those finishes, I think, where the championship not only came down to the last meeting, came down to the last race, in the last few laps, you know, where he has to, someone's got to get to a certain position. And when it's Jason Plato that you're chasing and he happens to be leading the race, I mean, you really got to put in a decent turn to be able to get up there.
Well, I mean, watching that race back last night, I mean, his front brake discs were glowing red.
Yeah.
And when you think what happened to that car, 4 years later, with Dan Camish, exactly the same position, and he chucked him off the track, didn't it, on the last lap. It cost him the title. And that could easily have been Gordon Shedden that day. So the margins are so fine. But I know from seeing an interview with Jason Plato earlier this year, and he's not happy with that race. I mean, he clearly says in this interview that he should have won the championship that year, but he's never seen so many cars moving out the way to let Gordon Shedden come through.
Right.
And I must admit, watching it back yesterday, I was thinking it's a little bit too easy there. I mean, there wasn't much resistance going on at all. I mean, I get drivers probably think, I don't want to get in the way of somebody's title, but come on, you've got to race a little bit hard. I mean, to be fair to Jack Goff, he was the only driver to hang. I mean, granted, he had a podium, but he was really racing hard, with Shedden hard but fair, and that's how it should be. And I think if Alain Menu hadn't, I mean, Gordon Shedden was stuck behind Alain Menu in 15th at one point just after the safety car, and then Menu he just couldn't get past Menu, and Menu got a puncture. And that cleared the way then. And obviously, Menu was Plato's teammate at the time. He was standing in for Warren Scott. So
I totally forgot about that.
Could have been really interesting. Yeah, well, like I say, I didn't remember it. I was surprised how much stuff I didn't remember from this season. And that was one thing I didn't remember. How Alain Menu came back and was doing a job until he got a puncture. And you just, sometimes the racing gods are on your side, aren't they? And sometimes they're not. And you look at that incident and the glowing discs and all that, and I can understand where Jason was coming from, because it did look a little bit too easy at times, the way Shedden was cutting through.
I mean, we said that we had similar discussion, didn't we, this year with Ash?
Yeah, at Silverstone. Yeah, it's like the social media era of racing, isn't it? Where everybody's nicey. You couldn't imagine in the 90s, David Leslie and John Cleland. There's no way you'd be getting. And you look at the last of that brigade, Jason Plato, Matt Neal. They wouldn't be doing it either.
No, they wouldn't. No,
unless it was their teammate. But
there's one guy I was reminded about, actually. That again, I remember the pre-season, the build up to it, and I didn't know who this guy was, but he came with a high pedigree that I was reminded of. Andy Prio. He came back. He was, looking back on it again, he was brilliant in that season.
Well,
to have him there.
It was brilliant that he was back. I mean, I was a huge Andy Prio fan. I mean, I remember he won the Renault Spiders. I think it was in '99. And the Renault Spiders were an excellent support. That used to be on the touring cars. I loved the Spiders. And he won every single race that season, and I think he set the fastest lap in every single race as well. Because I remember him talking at the time, saying it wasn't just winning the races that was important to him; it was getting the fastest lap in every race that was important to him. He absolutely, literally made people sit up and take notice. And then in 2001, obviously he came in, stood in for Vauxhall, did a brilliant job in the Egg Sport car, got his drive at Honda. went off to the World Touring Cars and became an absolute superstar for BMW. And we never really got to see him race properly, did we, over here? Just that one season.
Yeah.
And he came back in 2015, and I was really disappointed with him, you know.
Yeah, okay.
Really, he won those 2 races, but other than that, he just did nothing at any stage that made you sort of sit up and take notice. And, you know, I think Sam Tordoff did a far better job than him.
He was, yeah. He was another one I was going to come to. Was that his first year at BMW, wasn't it?
It might have been, yeah, but he was only 40 as well, Andy Prieur. He was only not old at all. He was younger than Colin Turkington is now, and yeah, he just I was really disappointed with the results he got.
I wasn't familiar with the history, obviously, that you experienced with Andy Prieur, so I think knowing the accolades he came in with, and you know, I think he was entertaining to have in there because he was one of those who he wasn't hanging around, and he came from the same ilk as like Neal and Plato, where he's not afraid to get in the mix and push people, not push them out of the way, but you know, he's gonna fight for his positions. He's not gonna make it easy on anyone. Sticking with the BMW camp, one guy I did feel sorry for at times was Rob Collard. I mean, a couple of times he got taken out by his own teammates.
Well, one of them was Prieur, wasn't it?
It was Prieur and Tordoff, I think. Yeah.
But I think the thing that really disappointed me was, like I say, he's an absolute legend, Prieur, and I was so excited when he came out because I was gutted when he went away because we never really got to see him.
No.
He reminded me quite a bit of Soper. Yeah, we went off and became BMW's main guy, and then he came in to replace Colin Turkington, who had been the champion. So he's basically stepping into Colin Turkington's shoes, and I thought, you know, he was way off. He was way off what Colin Turkington did in that car, and that was a real disappointment. But great to have a legend on the grid. But I thought he got done by a few of his teammates, I think, that season.
Yeah. So no, you're right. Tordoff, going back to him though, he I remember watching him he came up from the Porsches, didn't he? A few years before. I think I saw him I saw him in his last season with the Porsches, and then I think it was 2014 he came up.
I thought he did Clios or something like that.
I think it was the Porsches. Anyway, one of those. He was definitely he was on the support register anyway. He was on the support, wasn't he? And I remember when he stepped up to MG. I mean, again, it was almost like when Plato joined as a joint Menu at Renault, and really gave from the off. He gave Menu a run for his money. You kind of saw Tordoff do that with Plato at MG. So it was great to see him. You know, he got I think a couple of wins, didn't he, in that 2015
he did.
season?
Again, where is Sam Tordoff these days? You know, he was top class, wasn't he? Him and Andrew Jordan, they should be in this championship. The championship's a poorer place, I think, for not having those guys in it. Drivers that you thought were going to be in it for the next 10, 12 years, win a couple of championships each. And the championship's poorer, I think, for not having them in it, because some of the drivers that replaced them aren't as good, really. Assuming Axel's the only real one that stands up, isn't he?
He is. Yeah, I mean, at least nowadays with the mini Miglias, however you pronounce it, on the support. Hopefully they'll be back next year, and we get to see obviously both Jordans there, which was fun to watch this year. So you mentioned Ash Sutton there. So another one that I think we need to mention in 2015. We've already mentioned him, Matt Jackson. He came back in partway through for Motorbase, and quite quickly he bagged 3 poles on the bounce. I think he got I haven't got his results in front. I think he got a win or 2, didn't he?
Four. There was only Jason Plato who won more. He won the same amount of races as Colin Turkington and Gordon Shedden.
And there you go. So
you wonder if they'd done a full season, what they could have done, but they didn't have championship ballast. So I mean, they even said that in interviews that it made it easy because he was able to qualify on pole every time, basically. And then
even then,
races were in the bag then. But he did win with ballast. Yeah, he won a couple of times with ballast. So I think he was maybe sort of doing himself down a little bit. I think they could have well been up there that season.
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't they couldn't start the season because, motor base and the Ford Focus, it's just becoming synonymous with team dynamics in the Honda, isn't it? Because they almost just bring success together, which I think brings us nicely full circle, knowing how he finished the season with them and in that car. He's one I would love to see back, I think.
Yeah.
Get
Just
him,
can't see it
get
happening
him
now.
in the
He's
Napa
been
car.
out of it he's been out of it for a while now, hasn't he?
Yeah.
He hasn't even been doing any kind of racing, has he?
Haven't heard of anything that he's been doing, but I would love to almost see just even a couple of meetings of him in a Napa car and just see
one of the most spectacular drivers the last sort of 10, 15 years. Especially in that BMW, he was fantastic. But not many drivers have been able to turn the hand at both. Ash Sutton's the only one, really, where you can say brilliant in rear wheel drive and just as good in front wheel drive. Ash Sutton and Matt Jackson, but obviously it's just that Matt didn't get the titles to back it up.
No.
But I thought when I was watching, I thought how strange is it? Because Josh Cook, I think, did his first season this year. Tom Ingram was maybe, I was thinking, his second season and got his first podium.
Yeah.
And there was no word of Ash Sutton. And I think it's not that long ago, 8 years and 4 years, 4 titles later. He's done it so much in just 8 years. Whereas back then, he wasn't on the horizon, was he?
No, and this is why I think
so much.
You cannot deny. I know we at risk of turning this into the Ash Sutton show, but he is the only one I think who has got the best chance of being, having the most titles ever. He's got years to do that. He's only got one to go. Just looking at when did he make his debut?
Was it 2017 or? It was
2017.
Josh, 2017. It was him and Josh Cook in the MGs, wasn't it?
Actually, 2017 was his title. Did he win the title on his first year?
Oh no, he must have been 2016 then, because he won his first title in 2017. That was in a Subaru, I believe.
Yeah, that was it.
So it must have been the following year. He and Josh Cook got snapped up for late MG.
That's right. Yeah, keep forgetting they were both there. Again, that car just kept going and going and going. It just didn't have 2015. It just wasn't the MG season. I think that was at the point I realised. I think they almost quickly became that kind of, not a standby car, but they were more. It became the sort of transitional car, didn't it? That it started its decline towards the back of the grid, whereas Plato and Tordorf and that had been placing it at the front for a couple of years.
It did well in the second half of the season. Jack Goff did win and had a number of podiums, but Andrew Jordan only had one podium in the second half of the season, which was crazy for a driver as good as he was. He didn't have many seasons, did he, where he was off the pace, but he was certainly he just didn't seem to adapt to that MG.
No.
Where was Andrew Jordan in 2016? And did he go back to Honda, Team Family Honda? Did he? He didn't go to BMW, did he?
He went to BMW eventually, didn't he?
Or did he go there for 2016?
I'm just going to have a look. Where are we? Eurotech, 2014, 15 888, 2016 Motorbase with Ford Focus. So he went to Ford.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah. I'm less, and then he went to WSR 2017. So he had a bit of bouncing around those few years, I think, didn't he? Really, once he won his title, I think he couldn't. Not that he couldn't settle. I think he's almost like he was trying his hand at different things to try and put himself back up there again. And it just wasn't really happening, was it? But,
no.
I do love his livery though. I know we've already done an episode on
the metallic one.
I didn't know about that one until I watched it back. That was the metallic blue.
Oh, but I know what you're talking. Yeah, the Snapton when they ran the MG in like a silver livery, didn't they, for Silverstone? Yeah, I think to mark something, and that was pretty special.
Before we finish off, sort of wrapping up the 2015 one guy I did want to give a shout out to, Adam Morgan. Again, another favourite car, that Wix Racing B-Class Mercedes was great. But he did quite well Yeah, he was definitely up there in the mix. I think he got at least a couple of podiums, if not more.
I think he did. He won his first race that season, first race on the road, but he finished in the top 10 in every race as well.
Yeah.
He was the only driver to do so.
Oh, there you go. It's,
Mr. Consistency, isn't he?
Yeah,
always has been, really.
And it was back then in those years that I really thought he would just continue and he would eventually be fighting for a title somewhere.
Yeah. He still might. I mean, we've talked on here before, haven't we, at length about the disappointment of the BMWs this season, and I don't think that's any slight at
no.
Morgan or Colin Turkington. They've proven themselves as top drivers over the years, but for whatever reason, it seemed to work brilliantly for Jake Hill, but those guys just couldn't get a tune out of it after,
no,
in the past. But
yeah.
Adam Morgan's still got plenty of life left in him to come back.
BMW might as well, thinking about it, because they had I think going back to 95, I read somewhere that was one of their worst, after all the success they had for so many years, that was one of their worst seasons. So they almost they naturally go through these peaks and troughs, and then they did come back and they had more success.
Well, that showed the competitiveness of 1995, because they had Johnny Cecotto driving, who was a world touring car champion, and even he couldn't even get a podium. So in that famous GoldenEye liveried BMW.
Oh yes, yeah.
Which is a bit of a classic. But yeah, it's
cool. Any closing thoughts then on either of the seasons that we have covered today?
No, just that it's two absolutely classic seasons, with really good title battles, lots of different race winners, lots of entertainment. I mean, I've got it in my notes here, just on that 2015 season. I've got 2 races down here which I've put down as absolute BTCC classics, and the first one was race 2 at Brands Hatch, where Plato was 4 seconds in the lead, got a puncture at paddock, went off, and what had been an epic 4-car scrap for second became an epic scrap for first, and the Gordon Shedden ended up winning by a bumper, one of the closest finishes we've seen in touring cars. And then likewise, race 3 at Donington Park was a 5-driver battle for the win, from Josh Cup, Aaron Smith, Rob Collard, Andrew Jordan, and Matt Neal. So there was some cracking races in 2015, and if anyone's out there and you're missing your touring cars, there's 2 good seasons, I think, there to dig out and put on. You certainly won't be
disappointed,
less than entertained, that's for sure.
No, and if you are missing your touring cars, nice little segue into this. So if you are missing your touring cars over the winter, despite the fact that we're going to take ourselves a little bit of a break, we'll be back again probably the other side of Christmas with a bonus episode, and then we will be relaunching again sort of January, February time, looking ahead at the new season. But you've got our back catalogue of episodes. Don't forget about it, so you can delve into the other episodes that we have had over the last sort of 6 months or so, however long it is that we've been doing this now, and sort of the ones that I've done before. Keep an eye on our page. We will be updating. We'll be putting, we'll hopefully be feeding your BTCC appetite over the winter. But anything that you want to hear us talk about, a bit like this, this was a great episode. This is the kind of thing that I loved doing. This is what I really wanted to do. And amongst the season, the current season stuff is deep diving into, the classics. So if there's any seasons out there, any topics you want to hear us talk about, drop us a message on the page, and we'll run with it like this. This is always fun. So.
Meetings, I think we'll have to do a Knock Hill meeting at some stage. There's some meetings in the way where we've had some absolute epic touring car races over the years.
It's a great track. I only came to appreciate how much I enjoyed it this year when I was watching it. Sort of learning a little bit more about the tracks themselves rather than just what's going on them. And so much so that we're hopefully planning a family trip up there next season if we can do, because I think as exciting as Thruxton should be, I think Knock Hill always delivers. Yeah. So definitely be worth the trip up there. So yeah, that's a cracking idea. But, thank you as always, guys, for all of the listens, shares, likes, views, everything that you do to support us. Thank you to Kevin Whitewood out there who keeps giving us shout outs. We really do appreciate that. And everyone who's into touring cars, if you're not yet part of Kevin's British Touring Car chat group on Facebook, you need to get yourself on there. So that's the place to be, as well as being here, obviously. Lee, I need to say thank you again, mate. You know, you've made the second half of this season really entertaining in what we're doing on this show, and I can't wait to see what next year brings us.
Looking forward to it, especially when that bug bites, and you know, there's plenty to discuss and plan. But for people listening, just one thing we can say is just remember to leave that Facebook page a like, but not just that. You know, the YouTube page, subscribe, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, so that you'll get the notifications of any videos or shows that come out, and just spread the word to all your like-minded BTCC fans, and we'll look forward to speaking to you in 2024.
We will. And even if you've got some friends who aren't BTCC fans, if you want to get them into them, send them our way.
There you go.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Lee. And we'll see you all again very, very soon.
Take care.
Yes. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Also follow us on Facebook to keep updated about all future shows.